And it's time again for another get-together. Welcome back. This is Evan Talks. This is your host. I am Evan J. Kopelson. You can call me Ev. And tonight we are in lockdown review number 2. We're in the Covid19 lockdown era. There is a constitutional alert I am calling. Governors and mayors are out of control. Okay, our freedoms are being trampled on left and right. It is not even funny. And they are now talking about coming into your home and forcibly removing you or your family member to a safe facility, which sounds very akin to those FEMA camps that we heard about so many years ago that even I thought was crazy when people were saying they were building these FEMA camps. I'm going to show you some video tonight that is going to rattle your cage a little bit, okay? So get ready for that. This is, I'm going to go through some slides that I covered last week for anyone who didn't catch my first lockdown review. I just want to review a couple of the tenets of constitutional law and explain why, from my perspective as a lawyer, none of the lockdowns actually passed constitutional muster, and that a lot of the state courts, if they're upholding these laws, they're going to be overturned when they get to the Supreme Court. We're in a very crazy time. Some would call it scary. I would say some of the things that are going on are absolutely horrifying right now from a constitutional perspective. There are some that say we will be back to normal eventually and we shouldn't panic. I'm not panicking. I think cool heads prevail. But from what I see, there is reason for concern, and a lot of it. So tonight we're going to, again, review the constitutionality or lack thereof of the lockdowns in general. We're going to talk about how any average reasonable person can do this constitutional muster test on your own. I'm going to teach you exactly the questions to ask and why you're going to know by the end of this episode that none of the lockdowns are constitutional. They should all be struck down, and America should be free to go back to business immediately. So welcome to Evan Talks. I want to welcome my friends and family who are here. Let me see. Grace is here. Grace Kavanaugh. Johnny Forster. Dude, I haven't seen you for a while. Kate Somerville is watching, and you stayed up late just to cheer me on. I'm putting that right here on the screen. Kate, I'm so happy you're here. Gabe, my cousin Gabe Feinberg, who is a lawyer himself and is going to be ruling the world pretty soon. Thanks for coming, Gabe. So let's see. As I'm trying to add, there we go. There's Kate's comment. Kate, thank you for staying up late. Tatiana is here. I'm really happy to have you guys here. So what I'm going to do tonight, and I now can see comments. So, hey, Jennifer, what's up? I'm really happy to have comments working. I think Facebook fixed their comment integration. So you'll see now if I can get my mouse to work, I can drag your comments onto the screen one at a time. So I'm going to go through the slides. I'm going to take you through some video tonight. And then if you like, if we want to engage, we can engage. Something I'm thinking about doing tomorrow night, Thursday, is kind of a movie night. And hey, Tatiana, I'm so glad that you're here. So I want to show you a clip of a movie tonight that was going around yesterday. And I'm going to play you a few minutes of it tonight. And if you guys want, this movie keeps getting taken down off YouTube and it keeps getting reposted. So what I'm thinking is we can do kind of a watch party tomorrow. And hey, Jennifer, what's up? So this is awesome. So tomorrow night, if you want, let me know. And I'll do like a watch party. So like I can start the show like this. And then like I'm going to show you some videos tonight. We can watch a longer video tomorrow. There's like a 25-minute video I'd like you all to see if you haven't seen it yet. And so we're going to get into that. So let's get going with the show tonight. What I want to do to put this in context is start right now with a 5-minute video. Okay. And I'd like you to stay with me. I hope you stay with me all the way through the show, because I want to start with this video that puts into context some of the things that we've been asking over these past few weeks. Is this a real pandemic, or is this more of like a scamdemic? There's a lot of people dying. Obviously, I just went to a Zoom funeral today of another friend of mine who lost his father. And, it's just really sad that people are dying from comorbidities. And so and then I was in a meditation this morning with my friend Larissa Stowe, and she made a call to compassion. And I thought that was really important. Because I come on really strong and I have a lot of opinions, and they're really strong opinions right now because our rights are being trampled on. And so I appreciate the reminder to be compassionate at the same time. Like, it's really hard to take this stuff on. A lot of censorship is happening. There are people who, YouTube is pulling videos down left and right from like real credentialed doctors who are questioning the narrative. And, people are shaming each other into silence. And that kind of shocked me out of my own sense of complacency and back onto video. So that's why I'm here with you guys now, is because I just feel, there's this saying, if not me, who? And if not now, when? And that's kind of what brings me here. I really don't want to need to be doing this. And I think a lot of us feel like we can't even believe the world that we're in right now. It's really weird. So I think it's really important that we come together and we start looking at stuff and we talk about stuff and we create this space where, we're not shamed into silence. And so anyone who's seen me for the last couple of weeks, I've been clearing house, making space for this and raising the frequency so we can up the level of these discussions. And I've been cutting out people left and right. So like, I forgot to pull up this slide today. I was going to do a little slide disclosure. So I did one of those personality tests, those Myers-Briggs tests, and it's like 100 questions or something. It takes a long time to get through. And then it tells you your personality type and all of this insight into your personality. And I found out that I'm the INFT slash T, INFTJ or something like that, INFJ slash T. And so basically I'm an introvert and I have extroverted qualities. I'm here on live video, but I'm here alone. So I actually feel very like nice and cocoony in my little introvert space. But the thing that I wanted to share with you about that is one of the things that I learned about myself is that nothing gets my goat more than when somebody questions my sincerity or my motives. And so I realized lately why I've been like calling it the purge and just banning people left and right, because when people question my sincerity, when I am not getting paid for this, I'm not making any money right now. Nobody is, hardly, unless you're in one of those essential jobs. And we'll talk about that more too. And so this is a labor of love, and it's because I care. And so anyone who wants to doubt that is going to be just swept right off my plate, because I need people with me now who get where I'm coming from and why I'm doing this and want to be here and want to elevate the discussion. And if you're still one of those people who just wants to nitpick and fight, there's plenty of places on Facebook where that is welcome. And on my profile, that's been welcome for a really long time, but not really anymore, because it was dragging me down, and my energy level, if you've seen, I've been here on video almost daily since I started this thing again. And we're going to keep ramping up the momentum, okay? So one thing I can't do is continue to go down the rabbit holes like fighting with people on Facebook commenting. So that's no longer going to be happening. We're going to be talking here now. And my friends and family and everyone who comes around and supports me in my work that I'm doing by taking on some of the naysayers and stuff like that, I appreciate it. Look, if you're on my friends list, if you're on my profile, it means that I like you, okay? And like, so I hope that we can stay friends. I hope that we can have a productive relationship as we all grow and change, okay? So let's just launch into this right now. Now okay, so here's the thing. I want to show you this 5-minute video, and then I want to come back and talk and show you some slides and put the constitutional talk into context for you, okay? And I'll run through some slides, and then I'll show you some more video and some internet stuff that ties together kind of the theme for the night. And then we'll wrap it up for tonight, okay? So that's kind of the plan for tonight. So let me get started and show you this video. I'm going to stay here in the corner, so I'll be here watching with you, and then I'll meet you back here right after the video, and we'll talk about it, okay? So this is a 5-minute video that was posted yesterday that like 10 people sent to me, and it was from Dr. Rashid Buttar. And Dr. Rashid put on the video that he was going to remove the video after 24 hours. And I almost didn't watch it because I kind of hate when people do that, because I come from the marketing world, and that's called a scarcity play. When someone says, hey, get it now, it's not going to be available. And then usually it is available. So you know what I did? I downloaded the video to my vault, I call it, because a lot of censorship's happening now. So when I see videos on YouTube that are on point, I download them now because they're getting pulled, and I want to be able to show them to you and talk to you. So I downloaded that video, I went and did other stuff, and then when I went back to watch the video, lo and behold, it was gone. So Dr. Rashid stayed true to his word, and I'm really glad that I downloaded the video, because I think it's really important, the message that he is getting across in there. Let me play that for you right now without any further ado, and then I'll meet you back here right after. So Dr. Rashid,
I will show you the actual patents that exposes the coronavirus not only having a patent, but having multiple patents, and these patents have been filed years ago that got perfected in November of 2019, the month before COVID-19. From what it appears right now, we're the only ones on the entire planet of the 7.7 billion people that really have proof of what is truly happening. I'm not here to convince anybody. I'm not here to put words in your mouth. I'm not here to put thoughts in your head. I'm only here to show you what you can see with your own eyes, and then let you decide what truth is.
Something just since the beginning hasn't seemed right with this coronavirus. And now looking at the recommendations on how to kill it, it's a weak-ass virus. Like 80 degrees kills the virus. I'm like, I haven't really heard of a virus that weak. Just drinking hot water can kill it. Vitamin C can kill it, no problem. Just being in the sun can kill it. Laundry detergent kills it. The second it hits your stomach acid kills it. I'm like, wow, that is like the weakest virus that I've ever seen. And really the symptoms, it can only live on your hands 5 to 10 minutes. On metal it lasts longer, but it doesn't cause a sneeze, and the survival rate is great among people who are healthy. And I remember my wife telling me, there's actually a patent on the coronavirus. And I'm like, nah. I'm like, that figures, because the drug companies, I wouldn't put it past them. But then I looked a little further, and there is a patent on it. It's patent US 200-625-7852, a US patent on the coronavirus. And it's called Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome, coronavirus. And that was applied for in 2006 by a company called Chiron. And so this company Chiron applied for it and was granted this patent on this virus, which was then bought by GlaxoSmithKline, one of the 10 largest pharmaceutical companies in the world, who happens to specialize in vaccines. So now I'm looking into, maybe there's a coronavirus vaccine. There's a European patent on a coronavirus vaccine. European patent EP 317231-9B1. That was applied for in 2014, and what do you know? It was just granted in November of 2019. What perfect timing! all of a sudden they're going to say, here comes the savior with the vaccine, and they're going to swoop in, and then in order for your kids to be able to go back to school, they're going to have to get this coronavirus vaccine that they just all of a sudden came up with 6 years ago.
That takes us to the patents. This is all the papers on coronavirus that have been published since 1968. So how is it possible that with all this research done, there could be actually a patent? And that's actually what the previous doctor had talked about, the coronavirus patents. Okay, so here's a patent for severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus, and this is a US patent that he talked about that was then ended up being sold to GlaxoSmithKline. But then there was also a European patent. A European patent, this is what I want you to see. This is very interesting. This patent is owned by a company called the Pirbright Institute. This is the European Patent Office, as you can see right there. Maybe make it even bigger so you guys can see it. European Patent Office. And this is a patent, EP3172319A1 on coronavirus. Now, what's interesting is that this particular one here, this one, again, by the way, look at the application numbers. These are, if you look at who owns these, they're all, applicants are all this Pirbright Institute. I wonder who this Pirbright Institute is. Some of you could probably guess, but this is Pirbright. Now, so let's look up who Pirbright is. So let's go to the Pirbright and see. Look at this, Pirbright Institute, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Interesting, huh?
Very interesting, right? Okay. So, look, very interesting indeed. And so this gets me thinking, okay, what happens when vaccine research is being done and, virus research is being done? Is it that they're trying to patent things as they discover them, or is it that they're trying to patent things that they are going to unleash on us later? That is a question for another show. But I want to set the stage. So look, here's what I'm doing in these previous shows and coming into this one and where we're headed. Okay, so I've been laying foundation. I'm going to lay a little bit more tonight. I'm going to explain why, when I say something's unconstitutional, why. I'm not just talking out my ass. I'm talking as a lawyer based on learning constitutional law. It's a simple test. And so I'm going to teach that to you tonight. So let's go ahead and just let me run through this, because we've got a bunch of, I've got about 5 different internet tabs I want to show you today. So I just want to do a quick review of this lockdown, okay? And let me get to those slides. So this is a constitutional alert, okay? I want to talk to you a little bit about, we already watched Dr. Rashid's video. This is a COVID-19 review. We know it's a real virus. We know real people are dying. We know that COVID-19 targets a specific subset of individuals, and it's incredibly brutal to those with underlying health conditions, the elderly, specifically the elderly, the critically ill, and the immunocompromised. People in these vulnerable categories are at severe risk from COVID-19. And the thing they're not telling us is about 90+% of the people who get COVID-19 recover from it. A lot of us don't even know that we had it, okay? I'm speaking in the royal we. I don't think I've ever had it. So the coronavirus is a common cold virus. That means it can be best fought with a strong immune system. And, I want to touch on the New York City deaths. I covered that last week. And it's really horrible. But all these deaths were exacerbated by horrible management by Governor Cuomo. I'm not here to bash on Governor Cuomo. He is doing his best, obviously, in a really hard situation, but he committed malpractice and should absolutely be held accountable for thousands and thousands and thousands of deaths in New York. It was known from the very beginning that the elderly were at extreme risk from COVID-19. And instead of separating people at nursing homes and senior elder care facilities from staff and other patients who had contracted COVID-19, he actually put them all together and mandated that senior facilities readmit patients and staff who had been tested positive with COVID-19. And so his mandate was a death sentence to every person who died in these senior care facilities. The elderly should be and should have been isolated from everyone with COVID-19 as the highest priority. So that's really horrible and has really exacerbated the deaths. So it's not like about left and right. It's really about right versus wrong. I want to go quickly through these next 4 slides. So why do I feel qualified to talk about this? I do happen to have OSHA certification training in safety and health. And so that was for some consulting work that I do, and I had to get this certification. And so what I learned was protocols. And what all OSHA safety inspectors learn are the implementation order of these protocols. So there's controls, they're called, and there's 3 main types. There's engineering controls that stop a hazard from happening in the first place. There's administrative controls that if you can't stop it with engineering, you can do behavior modifications, and that's rules and regulations like the lockdowns get kind of lumped in there. And then there's PPE, personal protective equipment, which is the last line of defense. So engineering controls attempt to stop a hazard from ever happening in the first place. Just think of like a manhole cover, right? So if you have a manhole in the street, that's a fall hazard, and anyone can drive or fall into it when they're walking. So covering it with a manhole cover is an engineering control that would stop the fall hazard from happening. Now, if a manhole cover was not able to be put there for any reason, maybe they had to work there all day and they needed that cover removed so it makes a greater fall hazard, then what they'll do is they'll go into administrative controls. So in the next slide, I'll continue the fall hazard analogy. In terms of the virus, if there's a prophylactic medicine, if there's a treatment that they can give you, those things are like engineering controls that they can kill the virus or stop it from taking hold in your body. That would be an engineering control. And I want to make a quick aside. Actually, where's my little aside, my little pop-in camera? Okay. So here I'm popping in, okay? So here's my little aside is that I'm only speaking for myself here. I'm not speaking for OSHA. I'm not speaking for any organization. I'm not speaking for anybody except myself, Ev Kopelson. So that's all I wanted to say about that. And let's go back to these slides. So if engineering controls don't work, we go to administrative controls. So like, let's go back to the fall hazard. You might have seen when you're in the street, if there is construction going on, there might be guardrails and safety rails and hazard tape around a manhole that prevents you from actually being able to fall in because it says, steer clear or stay away, or it says fall hazard or something right there. That's an administrative control where it's basically signage or rules like if you're in a facility and it says, authorized personnel only, that's an administrative control. Or if it says, you have to have a pass to enter, anything like that is administrative control. So behavior modifications, rules, and regulations intended to mitigate the hazard, that includes stuff like the safer at home orders and the stay at home orders. And then it goes all the way into all these things that we're talking about now that I say are unconstitutional. So I'm going to explain that as we go on today. But the social distancing rules, the forced business closures, the restrictions to commerce, and you can't buy this, but you could buy that. You can't go to this store, but you can go to that store. You're allowed to stay open, but the guy next to you has to close. All of those things are what I call overreaching administrative controls, and that's where constitutional law issues come into play with overly restrictive administrative controls. And we'll unpack more of that in a minute. Now, when engineering and administrative controls both fail to completely eliminate a hazard, OSHA turns to personal protective equipment, or PPE. So PPE doesn't eliminate the hazard, but it does mitigate the risk to the individual. So, for instance, medical and healthcare workers use PPE to protect themselves from infections. Construction workers use different types of PPE to protect themselves from struck by hazards and flying materials and things like that. Surgical masks, gloves, paper clothing, face shields, other protective clothing and gear, all examples of PPE. PPE should shield a person from respiratory particles that carry COVID-19 if it's, a proper surgical mask. The cloth masks that are being mandated are actually completely ineffective, and there's a lot of science that shows that those are completely ineffective and unsafe. Like 97% of all particles can pass through a cloth mask going in either direction. Ostensibly, if you're infected with COVID-19 and you wear a surgical mask or an N95 mask and then you cough or sneeze, ostensibly you're protecting others by wearing those masks in crowded spaces. So we've covered now the basic OSHA protocols and kind of where they fit. And now we can move on to the constitutional issues. So it's my position that 100% of the lockdown orders in place today are unconstitutional. Obviously, we're seeing different outcomes start to happen in state courts. And I can't show you a lot of details today, but I will say that yesterday, Texas threw out a case of a business owner that opened a business in defiance of the stay-at-home order. And basically because, or the prosecutor, dropped the case because when it got to court, they realized that there really is there's no reason why they should have the power to tell a private business owner in America that they have to close while letting other businesses stay open. There's just no way that that's legal. And so a lot of these business closures, I think, are going to be found unconstitutional. What I really think is crazy is the church closures and the temple closures and the restrictions to religious liberties. And I'm going to show you how there's a war on religious liberty and the First Amendment happening right now in America. And I'm going to show you that tonight. So, okay, so when I talk legal, I'm talking as a retired lawyer. Here is my bar card for the state of California. You'll notice it says inactive, and then underneath that it says only attorneys on active status are eligible to practice law. I haven't practiced law for a long time. I'm very proud to say that. And I don't have any desire or interest in practicing law. And I don't even know why I continue to subscribe to be an inactive member of the bar. I don't think the bar does anything for me. So I may not continue to pay those dues, but for now, I'm still an inactive lawyer in good standing. And so what that means is, so I'm not practicing law. I'm not giving legal advice. I'm also, when I'm talking about health and wellness, not giving medical advice or trying to cure or prevent any disease. But I am going to give you my opinions. So I may not be practicing law anymore, but I definitely still know my constitutional law issues. Okay. I want to show you very briefly why I know my constitutional law issues. So my constitutional law professor at New York Law School, is Nadine Strawson. Now, Nadine Strawson was president of the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union, for 20 years after she left New York Law School. Nadine wrote 2 great books. One is called Hate, Why We Should Resist It with Free Speech and Not Censorship. And her book that was out a long time ago when I was in her class was called Defending Pornography, Free Speech, Sex, and the Fight for Women's Rights. So Nadine Strawson has always been somebody I really admire. I used to wear a suit to her class and go sit in the front row. Constitutional law is some heady stuff, okay? So one of the things Nadine used to say a lot, here, let me get this button out of the way, is that our constitutional rights and freedoms are defined at their limits, okay? That means that it's usually the things we don't like and don't agree with that we have to fight to protect. Otherwise, the rights start to get infringed in closer to the areas that we do like. Does that make sense? So one of the biggest constitutional law cases for free speech was the People v. Larry Flynt. You might have seen that movie. And basically, through pornography, Larry Flynt secured free speech rights for all Americans, where what came out of that case was that basically free speech requires us to defend the rights of people we don't like or we don't necessarily even respect, to say things that we really don't agree with and even make us angry. We have to defend the rights of people we don't like to say things that make us angry or upset. That's what free speech really means. It doesn't mean that people are free to say the things that everyone agrees with and nobody has a problem with. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. Right now, I would say we are at our limits, and our limits are being trampled on. So I'm not going to go through all the rest of the slides in the presentation, but I'm going to show you the constitutional test that I promised I was going to show you at the beginning of the show. Here it is. The lockdowns are unconstitutional. I would argue they must be struck down, okay? And here's a constitutional law primer for non-lawyers, okay? Individual rights are inalienable. That means they can't be taken away. And our individual rights are enshrined in the U.S. Constitution and the Bill of Rights. For the government to pass any law that restricts our individual rights, there must be what's called a fundamental state interest, which outweighs the individual's interest in our personal freedom. So, however, even once there is a fundamental state interest, the government must then only act with a solution that is both narrowly tailored and only employs what's called the least restrictive means to achieve that fundamental state interest. So any laws that are not either narrowly tailored or if they seek to employ more than the least restrictive means necessary, are you following that, to achieve the fundamental state interests, those are unconstitutional and they're null and void. I'm going to unpack that for you tonight. So why the lockdowns are unconstitutional? First, the city and state lockdowns are going far beyond the least restrictive means necessary. The lockdown rules in many cases don't even make any medical sense. And those in power who ordered these lockdowns and those who are enforcing them, that's the police, are all violating the Constitution. And every civil servant that works for the government has taken oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Okay, so I would say that governors and mayors and police and anyone who is making or enforcing unconstitutional orders, for instance, arresting peaceful people for going to the beach or for violating social distancing, those people are all using power that's more than the least restrictive means necessary, okay? The COVID-19 death numbers are being inflated, and they include deaths from other causes. Now, this goes to the constitutionality issue, because if the COVID death numbers are being inflated, and they're not as high as they're telling us that they are, or if they're putting in all these other deaths that are not COVID deaths and telling us that they are COVID deaths so that we're more afraid, it goes to something that it's called problem reaction solution. Okay, and so it's like they create a big problem, they fearmonger all of us, everyone just screams, please do something, and then the solution that they shove down our throats is overly restrictive. So this is a slide from the CDC's own website, from the National Vital Statistics System, and it's called Provisional Death Counts for COVID-19. And the red lines will show you that the numbers that they're reporting as COVID deaths are not only the laboratory confirmed cases, but cases without any laboratory confirmation. That means they never even tested. So somebody can just decide that someone died of COVID and they can put COVID down. They can report COVID-19 as the probable or presumed on the death certificate. On this slide, I want to show you, this is the director of the Department of Public Health in Chicago, Dr. Ezike, and she is going to explain now in no uncertain terms how COVID deaths have been reported, okay?
I just want to be clear in terms of the definition of people dying of COVID. So the case definition is very simplistic. It means at the time of death, it was a COVID positive diagnosis. So that means that if you were in hospice and had already been given, a few weeks to live, and then you also were found to have COVID, that would be counted as a COVID death. It means that even if you died of a clear alternate cause, but you had COVID at the same time, it's still listed as a COVID death. So everyone who's listed as a COVID death doesn't mean that that was the cause of the death, but they had COVID at the time of death. I hope that's helpful.
Okay, so what I want to show you there is that I've taken you through the basics, okay? So you know what should be constitutional is a least restrictive means. So let's give an example of what's not a least restrictive means. In Michigan, you have the governor of Michigan who has made it illegal to buy food seeds and to buy paint and to have elective surgeries like she's calling hip and knee replacement surgeries, unnecessary. But you can get an abortion on demand if you want in Michigan, and you can buy alcohol, and so you can buy all kinds of stuff. But even in the superstores that are allowed to stay open, they have to block the gardening aisles, and people aren't allowed to purchase those items. So we have to ask ourselves, if we're trying to prevent the spread of a virus, okay, then why are we telling people they can't buy food seeds if they have to stay home for over a month and they're not allowed to go anywhere? I would think most people have kids at home and maybe could show their kids how they can plant and garden and grow food, and that would be a positive thing. Why shouldn't somebody be able to paint their house if they're stuck in their house for a month or two? These are things where there is no good reason why those items should be restricted, why buying those items would put you at more risk of getting a virus. And the same things, you might have seen some questions going around Facebook like COVID is the smartest virus in the world because it knows only to get you at mom and pop shops and businesses. It knows it can never get you at Home Depot or Lowe's or Target because those are essential businesses and those are allowed to stay open. And you can go through the shelves and you can touch everything there, and you're not going to catch the virus ostensibly, but you can't go and open your own mom and pop shop because somehow you're putting people in danger. That to me is blatantly overly restrictive. And so it's my position, and I'm hoping that some of you are starting to come along with this, that any restriction on commerce and business and opening your business when X business is allowed to stay open and Y business is not, there's potentially a constitutional violation. And when somebody's telling you that you can't go worship in your church or your temple, look, I'm not a religious guy. I chant a lot. I do a lot of yoga stuff. I love to sing holiday music. But I'm not super religious, you know what I mean? And so I find it very strange when I start to really get concerned and worry about my friends who are religious, who are having their religious freedoms impinged on. A lot of my friends go to church every Sunday. A lot of my friends who are more religiously Jewish than I am go to temple a lot. I hardly ever do. And so, but I don't want to be told I can't. And it's like the fact that we had Easter and churches across the country were told they couldn't stay open, but weed stores and liquor stores were allowed to stay open. It's infuriating, and it's not legal, and it shouldn't be legal. So now I want to show you some tabs and show you a couple of clips and show you some movies to show you how totalitarianism and authoritarianism is ratcheting up and it's ramping up. Because I've spent, a couple of weeks before I went on video here starting to post a lot about it, and I'm getting questions about it. Some people are like, yes, that's definitely happening. I can see it. Some people are like, I don't see it yet, or I can still go outside, or why is this a big deal? If it's only happening at such and such little place or whatever. It's because it's a slippery slope. And when we don't say anything and we let these freedoms get trampled on, it opens the floodgates, so to speak. So I want to show you some stuff now that I think is going to turn on some lights for you. And then we're going to move this discussion forward, move the needle a little bit forward. So let me go and show you a short clip that I showed you last week with the director of the WHO, the World Health Organization, or one of the doctors there, talking about how he wants to be able to go into your home and forcibly test you and your family members for COVID-19 and remove anyone who tests positive for the virus and forcibly remove them to a safe facility. Now, I showed this the other day in my Vax and Track endgame agenda. If you didn't see those replays, I am getting shadow banned. So a lot of my posts recently that are critical of the establishment are being shadow banned. What's a shadow ban? I've been asked. A shadow ban means that they don't take the post down, but they stop you from seeing it. They suppress it. So there have been posts where a bunch of you who are my friends who I know are on the same page with me about how I'm seeing stuff. I tagged dozens of you in different comments, and only very few of you actually even saw the tags. And we tag each other, fairly often on other stuff. So I know you guys would see the tags if they weren't being suppressed. So on my profile, you'll see former episodes from the other day that have very few views. And I know it's not because people aren't interested or resonating. It's because they're not letting you see the post. So make sure to go to my page and choose to get notifications. That's a good reminder. Go to my page, and where it says that you're following me, kind of drop down that menu and choose to see my posts first. So that way you'll always know when I'm coming on. And then somewhere on this live video, there might be like 3 dots to the upper right, depending on where you're watching the video. And you might be able to tap that and see something that says turn on live notifications, and that will actually notify you every time I turn on and I go live, okay? So if you do that, hopefully we can help grow this audience and make sure everybody's seeing this content. So let me go through and show you this thing. When I showed you this video the other day, even for myself, I'm like, that's pretty scary stuff. I don't know how they're going to roll that in America, maybe in foreign countries. But then something happened right here in California in Ventura County yesterday, which when I opened the show and said there's horrifying things happening, I'm going to show you that now. And if you're not horrified by the end of this episode, then nothing's going to rattle your cage, okay? So let me go ahead and change over to my Chrome. And I'm going to play you this 1-minute clip from Tucker. And this is the WHO guy. So just watch this real quick. I'm just going to move through all of these posts one at a time.
Last week, Dr. Michael Ryan, he's a leader at the World Health Organization, announced that in response to the spread of this virus, authorities may have to enter people's homes and remove family members, presumably by force.
In most parts of the world, due to lockdown, most of the transmission that's actually happening in many countries now is happening in the household, at family level. In some senses, transmission has been taken off the streets and pushed back into family units. Now we need to go and look in families to find those people who may be sick and remove them and isolate them in a safe and dignified manner.
Just so you know, we're coming to your house, seizing your children and, quote, isolating them in a safe and dignified manner.
I've been muted the whole time. You know what? Sita, thank you so much. Here we go. So I'm back on, I've got sound on now, right? Is this right? Okay. Everyone can hear me now? Hi, Monica. Thank you. Let's see. I've got a 30-second delay. So I turned on my mic, and you guys should see that in about 30 seconds. I hear that you have sound. So now you can hear me. Tatiana, you can hear me. Nick, you can hear me. How are you guys doing? Sita? Okay, thank you so much for alerting me to that. I wonder how much I missed. Okay, so thanks for bearing with me for like technical difficulties. Let me go back to what I was saying right at the end of that video. So what I was saying is that I'm going to show you this clip from the mayor of Chicago. And the mayor of Chicago is telling people now that she's going to send basically the Gestapo, that's what I'm calling them, police, to your house to arrest you if you're having a dinner party. Okay, and she's calling them parties, but there have been people having friends over in defiance of the stay-at-home orders, and this Chicago mayor isn't having it. Now, meanwhile, this Chicago mayor just got in trouble the other day because she had a haircut, and she was taken in pictures with the lady that was cutting her hair, and they were standing obviously right close to each other. There was no gloves or no masks happening. And the mayor of Chicago basically said she is so important that she needs to have haircuts. And she's like, she takes her hygiene very seriously. So that's obviously more seriously than you or me take our hygiene. We're not allowed to have haircuts. I had to buzz my whole head off with like a home razor. So anyway, listen to what the mayor of Chicago is saying to her constituents and tell me if you think that this is overreaching in government and if she's using the least restrictive means, okay?
If you want to hang out with your friends, call them. If you want to have a dance party, TikTok, some other form of video. But for every foolish person that hosts a party, for every foolish person that goes to a party, what you're doing is putting yourself in danger, putting others in danger, and making this crisis harder and longer and more difficult for us to control and contain. We all need to be thinking about the long game. And having these parties, when we need people to continue to stay at home, is just silly. What's it going to mean? It's going to mean that we're never getting out of this. Your actions are going to make a difference between whether or not we get out sooner or later, whether or not we have a summer or we do not. So it is absolutely essential that we stay the course and people stay home. Now, we know the heroes in our communities are doing exactly what they need to do. And even going a step further and telling us where some of these parties are actually happening. And we commend the people who are stepping up and recognizing that they have a responsibility and that we all have a responsibility.
Commending snitches.
I directed Superintendent Brown to order all police districts to give special attention to these parties. And this is how it's going to be. We will shut you down, we will cite you, and if we need to, we will arrest you and we will take you to jail. Period.
Okay, did you get that? If you live in Chicago, you better not have anyone over or you are going to jail. That's just something I want to show you. This lady is something to behold, okay? She's full of contradictions. She doesn't practice what she preaches, but she sure loves to ratchet up the threats and arrest her own people, okay? So that's Chicago. Now let's look at what happened in Ventura yesterday, okay? This is a 2-minute clip. And yesterday in Ventura, they basically just implemented what that doctor at the WHO was saying. And here is them announcing how they're going to start coming into homes and testing and possibly removing people forcibly. I posted something like this on my profile with some screenshots of text messages. And one of the text messages, one of the constituents in Ventura County texted the county and they said, forcibly remove people from your home? What are you talking about? And they said, well, if someone can't safely isolate at home, we have other places for them. So basically, your daughter, your son, your mother, too bad. Not up to you to decide how to take care of them. It's up to the state now. I mean, this is what I mean by horrifying. Here we go.
Is to bring on people. We're going to start with 10 people. We may bring on up to 50 or even more as the program grows and as we see the needs for it. As we do more testing, we will find more and more people who have COVID-19. And again, we'll isolate every one of them, and we will find every one of their contacts, and we will make sure that they stay quarantined, and we'll check in with them every day. In other words, what this program means is that we're going to do a more complete job, and we're going to do a more meticulous job of making it less and less possible for others in the county to run into someone with COVID-19 infection. It's not just our county that's bringing more people on. There are going to be thousands of people hired who will be these contact investigators throughout the state. And this is occurring in many, many other states as well, perhaps all of the states in our country. We will be giving intensive training to these people, training not only for identifying and finding contacts, but also in terms of how to be sensitive about doing it. We also realize that as we find more contacts, some of the people we find are going to have trouble being isolated. For instance, if they live in a home where there's only one bathroom and there are 3 or 4 other people living there and those people don't have COVID infection, we're not going to be able to keep the person in that home. Every person who we're isolating, for instance, needs to have their own bathroom. And so we'll be moving people like this into other kinds of housing that we have available. They'll also have other needs, perhaps, food, whatever it's going to be. The county will be there to back them up and to support them.
Okay, so are you horrified yet? Because it's, I really want to hear from you guys if you really are feeling where I'm coming from here. This is really happening. This is America. And I would say this isn't really America anymore. This seems like the New World Order, where medical or unelected people can pass these rules where they pound on your door and they say it's the COVID people. And did you hear what he said? They're going to hire thousands of people. And then if you go to what the Chicago mayor was saying, she was commending the snitches, people who she said go beyond and are telling them where they're having these parties. So that's like the people who are snitching on their neighbors and telling people who's going to the park or who's at the, beach. So they can send the people and they can fine them $1,000. Then in here, they're going to be hiring what they're calling contact tracing. So this is why I got so angry in my Vax and Track Part 2 video the other day. And I am really going to try to stop dropping the F-bombs and trying to stop getting really emotionally involved in some of this stuff. The problem is I'm not a professional news pundit, right? I'm just a guy with an opinion, and I wouldn't even be doing this if I didn't feel like this was really important and a dangerous time in life. So I do get personally kind of involved in the things that I'm talking about, but I think it's so important to kind of lay this stuff out that I am going to challenge myself to try and take a step back and present a little bit more and try to keep some of my most scathing commentary for later, because I really want to bring a lot of you along to kind of see how this is piecing together. And then we can discuss kind of what do we do about this in a society? This is out of control, right? So we have mayors in some cities saying that they're rewarding snitches. You know that Mayor Garcetti here in LA had that quote where he's like, well, snitches get rewards. And then the apps started, rolling out so you can contact trace. And then the reason I got so angry the other day talking about the news pundits that, like, even the conservative ones that I tend to admire more for having, thinking about stuff correctly, when it comes to issues like vaccine and public health, they fall into the same cognitive dissonance that everyone else seems to be into, and that they seem to trust the end game of vaccine. And they're starting to use the words of contact tracing as if it's a real thing that should be done, instead of something that we should be screaming about at the top of our lungs, that it's totalitarianism. Because contact tracing is really just tracing everywhere you go. Did you hear what that guy said from Ventura? We're going to find out who's infected, and we're going to find every one of their contacts, he says. And then we're going to test them and find out if they're tested. And then if you live in a place with not enough bathrooms so everyone can have their own bathroom, they're going to start removing people from your house because they're going to decide. I don't even know where to go from there. I think it's pretty clear what's going on. So from there, I just want to show you something really upsetting to me as a constitutional law buff and somebody, who believes, like, logically and reasonably the way I set forth why these lockdowns are unconstitutional. Today, a federal court, let me pop back so you can see what I'm looking at. Okay, so a federal court upholds the California ban on church services. Okay, so in the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, this was upsetting to me because let me tell you what happened. So Newsom banned churches. Some churches opened. They ended up in court. The police arrested worshipers. Lodi police entered the church during a service attended by about 30 worshipers. This is a church that can hold a couple hundred people. So you're talking about people who are socially distancing, right? And the church responded with a cease and desist letter to the city and argued they had a First Amendment right to gather and practice their religion. Constitutional rights cannot be suspended by a virus, the church's attorney said. The police posted a notice on the church building that it's non-essential, and it created a public nuisance, okay? And then there was, more details there. So in the courts, they argued that it was unfair for the churches to be closed when they could open liquor stores and marijuana dispensaries, and they were deemed essential. And then this is really interesting. The judge said the argument missed the point because in the other cases, shoppers were going to those businesses to purchase specific items, not to commune with each other. Now, here I think the judge missed the point because it's not just communing with each other, it's practicing their religion. And he left that out. And so there is a war on religion in America, specifically the left wing of America. And I find it very alarming, even as a non-religious guy. So they said that the state and local stay-at-home orders were a valid exercise of emergency police powers and didn't violate the church's constitutional rights. Now, the judge basically said that the Supreme Court over 100 years ago upheld the government's right to exercise police powers to promote public safety during a public health crisis. That must have been through the Spanish flu or something like that. So I think it's really just alarming, right? Because let me pop back in here. Here we go. I think it's alarming because, first of all, I don't think that the case was argued necessarily great. Like, yes, it is a good argument in plain English that a marijuana dispensary or an alcohol store being deemed essential, but the practicing of religion is not. But then the judge parsed that issue and said, well, you're comparing a gathering place to a retail establishment. So, like, that's a fine technicality, and he used that to kind of deny the case. What I would have countered with is it's not a place to commune with people. It's a place to practice religion, which is protected free assembly under the First Amendment. And so I believe that the judge erred. And I think when this goes up the ladder to some more federal courts, ultimately if it gets to the Supreme Court, I believe that it'll ultimately be bounced out. But basically I wanted to cover all that tonight, to basically say, look, they're hyping these numbers, they're making the COVID thing seem worse than it is. It's definitely bad to the people that it's bad to, the vulnerable, but it's really not a risk to the rest of us. In the Vax and Track last week, the other day, I showed a clip from Bill Gates talking to Chris Anderson of TED Talks and saying in no uncertain terms, he said, we don't want to see a lot of recovered people. So he wants to put us in this economic pain, he said, to force the shutdown, to force the world into this reset where we're going to artificially hold down the infection rates, okay? And then they're pushing this vaccine endgame. So everyone will say, oh, well, when we get the vaccine, we can go back to school, or we can go back to work, or we can get back out there. And I want to sound the alarm that, first of all, that end game is wrong. If someone says we're going back to normal when something in the future happens, it's a lie, because you don't go back to normal when you add something new that didn't exist in the before normal. Do you see what I mean? So adding a vaccine and adding global tracking and travel restrictions and contact tracing is so many layers of totalitarianism that trying to say it's going back to normal when they're shoving all that on the plate is a really cynical view, and it really is disrespectful of the intelligence of the American people. So, and the world, in the world. So I want to show you the beginning of this movie to kind of end tonight. And then if you want, we can do a whole watch party tomorrow night where we meet and we watch the whole 25-minute movie, and then we can talk about it after and kind of have a movie night. So I'd kind of like to do that tomorrow night. Is anyone interested in that? If you can just give me kind of a thumbs up or a yes in the box, then I'll know if that's something to do. And if you want to wait and you want to see the first couple of minutes of this video, I'll show you right now, because then you can tell me if you want to see more tomorrow, and then we'll wrap up the broadcast for tonight, because I think we've covered a lot. And I want to show you this before it gets too late, okay? So here we go. This movie, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to roll the tape and let you watch the first few minutes of this, okay?
Dr. Judy Mikovits has been called one of the most accomplished scientists of her generation. Her 1991 doctoral thesis revolutionized the treatment of HIV/AIDS. At the height of her career, Dr. Mikovits published a blockbuster article in the journal Science. The controversial article sent shockwaves through the scientific community as it revealed that the common use of animal and human fetal tissues were unleashing devastating plagues of chronic diseases. For exposing their deadly secrets, the minions of Big Pharma waged war on Dr. Mikovits, destroying her good name, career, and personal life. Now, as the fate of nations hang in the balance, Dr. Mikovits is naming names of those behind the plague of corruption that places all human life in danger. So you made a discovery that conflicted with the agreed-upon narrative.
Correct.
And for that, they did everything in their powers to destroy your life.
Correct.
You were arrested.
Correct.
And then you were put under a gag order.
for 5 years. If I went on social media, if I said anything at all, they would find new evidence and put me back in jail. And it was one of the few times I cried, and it was because I knew there was no evidence the first time. And when you can unleash that kind of force to force someone into bankruptcy with a perfect credit score, and so that I couldn't bring my 97 witnesses, which included the heads, Tony Fauci, Ian Lipkin, the heads of the public health in HHS, who would have had to testify that we did absolutely nothing wrong.
And so what did they charge you with?
Nothing.
But you were in jail.
I was held in jail with no charges. I was called a fugitive from justice. No warrant, literally drug me out of the house. Our neighbors are looking at what's going on here. They searched my house without a warrant, literally terrorized my husband for 5 days. They said, if you don't find the notebooks, if you don't find the material, which was not in my possession, but planted in my house.
As if you took intellectual property from the laboratory. Is that correct?
It was intended to appear as if I took confidential material, names, and intellectual property from the laboratory. And I could prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that I didn't. Heads of our entire HHS colluded and destroyed my reputation, and the Department of Justice and the FBI sat on it and kept that case under seal, which means you can't say there's a case or your lawyers are held in contempt of court. So you can't even get a lawyer to defend you. So every single due process right was taken away from me, and to this day remains the same. I have no constitutional freedoms or rights.
Yet you sit here. I think a lot of people would probably have just taken the retirement out early, laid low, but you have decided to come forth when your gag order has been released to write a book called Plague of Corruption, Restoring Faith in the Promise of Science, and you are naming names.
Absolutely.
Apparently, their attempt to silence you has failed. And I have to ask, how do you sit here with confidence to call out these great forces and not fear for your life as you leave this building?
Because if we don't stop this now, we can not only forget our republic and our freedom, but we can forget humanity because we'll be killed by this agenda.
So Anthony Fauci.
My name is Dr. Tony Fauci. I'm the director of
the man who is heading the pandemic task force was involved in a cover-up.
He directed the cover-up. And in fact, everybody else was paid off, and paid off big time. Millions of dollars in funding from Tony Fauci's organization, National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease. These investigators that committed the fraud continue to this day to be paid big time by the NIAID.
And the whole world is listening to his advice for how to handle this current pandemic. How do we know that what he's saying is what we need to be learning?
What he's saying is absolute propaganda, and the same kind of propaganda that he's perpetrated to kill millions since 1984.
We know from this study quite clearly that there will be a delay in progression significantly greater than for individuals who do not take the drug.
It started really when I was 25 years old. I was part of the team that isolated HIV from the saliva and blood of the patients from France, where Luc Montagnier had originally isolated the virus.
Okay, so I'm going to stop it there and hope that I whet your appetite a little bit to see some more of this. If you'd like to watch this full movie tomorrow night, let me know in the comments, and I'll organize a little watch party for tomorrow night, maybe a little earlier tomorrow night, maybe like a few hours earlier, because I won't have to prepare a lot of stuff before. We can just watch that together. So, how's everyone doing right now? I really hope that I'm laying this out in a way that makes sense to you guys. If I'm leaving out any leaps of logic or anything, I hope you guys would let me know and ask me. The kind of where I'm leading is, look, the alarm bells are ringing. We have doctors being censored. That's another watch party I can do, is where you can watch some clips from some doctors that are questioning. There is conflicting information. Okay, there is a lot of information that there's really no danger to most people from this virus, and then there's severe danger to a small subset of people. And then that the fear and panic being propagated by the media has caused, and then possibly a political agenda too, to unseat the president by, saddling him with a disaster and shutting down the economy, which was his strongest point. There's a lot of data points that are worthy of looking at, but primarily for us as, purportedly free people, we have to look at where our freedoms are being taken away. And we have to look at the hypocrisy in the leaders, okay? And we have to be able to step up and organize and share information and file lawsuits and class action suits and defy these orders and go up against them. Some people are being arrested and spending time in jail and then getting their cases dismissed. So that just happened with another business owner as well. In Texas, surprisingly, a lot of the action is happening in Texas right now in terms of freedom. So a lot of the totalitarianism is being pushed in California and in Michigan for sure. So that's kind of all I want to cover for tonight. Starting the next couple of days, I'd like to watch some videos together. So tomorrow, I'd like to watch this Plandemic Part 1 movie. And then going forward, there's a couple other videos we might like to watch together that have been coming into my inbox and really blowing up my inbox in the last week. So I'm starting to think that I can use a part of this show to kind of do a little video review or intro of a lot of the stuff that's getting sent to me. And so just so you know, this is kind of coming together day by day as I start to see things happening and I'm putting stuff together. I realize I can go deeper into another episode. So let me see. Kate Somerville has left a nice long comment. I'm dragging that on the screen, Kate. Let's see what it says. Here we go. A cheat sheet of talking points would be helpful for being able to discuss all the parts of the web of lies where we speak to others. We can sound logical and confident. That's what most people are looking for, is calm, intelligent leadership. That's a really good point, Kate. I have a feeling we can do something like that. I actually started something before I came online with these shows last week. A spreadsheet of sorts where I was starting to try to put everything together in kind of lists and columns. And I didn't get it quite organized in a way that made sense, so I didn't roll them out in the show. But what I'm reading from your comment is something like that might be helpful, so we can organize kind of our thoughts around all these different silos and different kind of things that are happening. So I like that, and thank you for that comment, Kate. Let me just scroll the comments here. John Elliott wants to watch the video. Okay, we're going to watch it tomorrow, John, for sure. It's good to see you, brother. Okay, so Monica, important discussion. Evan, thank you, Monica. I really appreciate you being here, too. This is really taking off, you guys. It's starting to happen, and it means a lot to me that you guys are showing up, because it means that, I'm not in a vacuum, and there's people that kind of understand where I'm coming from. So I really appreciate you guys being here. Tomorrow we're going to watch that movie, and I'll do more breathing coming up too. Make sure to catch my replays. On my profile, I'm starting to post links to my prior replays. Okay, since I'm streaming to my profile and not my evantalks page, I'm realizing that I'm losing some features, like I'm not able to make playlists and make it easy for people to find my videos. So there will come a time where we move this show over to the Evan Talks page. But for now, I'm doing it on my profile because I just have a lot more friends on my profile than I have followers on my page. And I want to make sure as many people can encounter this content as possible. So that's going to be it for tonight. I'm going to ask you guys, if you like this content, to please like it and share it and send it around. Find it on my profile, send it to your friends, tag them. Help us overcome this shadow ban so that other people can start to encounter this discussion and help us unpack all of these layers of bullshit that we're seeing in these contradictions between, you know, what could be a good reaction and what's definitely an overreaction. So wherever you are in this debate, if you're on the front lines protesting, I honor you and appreciate you. If you're a lawyer fighting constitutional cases, you are actually a hero for America right now. If you're just cheering on people who are doing the right thing, you're being a great person as well. If you are chastising people, snitching on your neighbors, using those tell people apps about parties, if you're walking outside with a mask alone or in your car with the windows up and the mask alone, I would invite you to consider that you might have bigger problems and stop believing all the hype and stop eating all the sheep food. So I'm going to leave you with that. Tomorrow we're going to have a watch party for the Plandemic movie. I know watch party's like a Facebook Live thing. That's not what I'm talking about, where you click the watch party button. It's going to be a new broadcast tomorrow night, and we're going to watch that movie that we just started. We're going to watch the whole thing, okay? So that's it for tonight. Evan Talks. Evan J. Kopelson here. You call me Ev. I love you guys. I wouldn't do this without you, and I'm here because of you and for you. And thank you for being here with me. I'll see you tomorrow. Sleep tight. Remember to breathe deep. And if you don't know how, check out my Breathing to Win workshops. I have 2 of them now on Facebook Live replays, and I'll be doing more of those as well. So for Los Angeles, I say goodnight, and I'll see y'all tomorrow. Have a good one wherever you're at. Sending you love, blessings, peace, and big illegal hugs without social distancing or masks. I love you. See you tomorrow.